I drove the Route 9 bus for 11 years out of Harlan County, Kentucky. 6 in the morning pickup, winding those switchbacks through the fog, dropping kids off at Cumberford Elementary by 7:45. Same route, same faces, same creak in the third step of that old international school bus that I kept telling dispatch needed fixing. My name is Dale Rucker, and I'm telling you this because I need somebody else to carry it. I can't keep it in my house anymore. It started the fall of 1994, last week of October. The county had just installed a computer and printer setup in the bus depot office. One of those chunky beige affairs, a dot matrix printer the size of a microwave. Nobody really used it except Carol at the front desk for scheduling. I'd come in early, sign my log sheet, pour bad coffee from the percolator, and head out. Standard morning. That particular Monday, Carol wasn't in yet. I signed my sheet, poured my coffee, and I noticed the printer had a long curl of paper hanging out of it onto the floor. Maybe 8, 10 feet of it. I figured Carol had run some kind of report overnight, or maybe the scheduling program had glitched. I didn't think much of it. I stepped over the paper, grabbed my keys, and left. The run was normal. Kids were loud. Little Tommy Breeze had a bloody nose halfway through, and I pulled over on Mill Creek Road to get him a paper towel from the box under the passenger seat. I dropped everyone off, came back, parked the bus, and went inside to refill my coffee before the afternoon run. Carol was at her desk, and she looked pale. I mean, she always looked pale. Carol was a woman of a certain complexion, but this was different. She was holding that curl of paper with both hands like it had bitten her. I asked her what the machine had printed. She said she didn't know. She said she'd come in at 7, and it was already on the floor, and the printer was still warm. She handed it to me because she didn't want to hold it anymore. It was names, just names, printed over and over in that faint, stippled dot matrix font. But they weren't random names. They were the names of the kids on my route, all 18 of them, in the order I picked them up. Tommy Breeze, Kayla Denton, Marcus Webb, every single one sequenced perfectly. And after each name, a number. I recognized them immediately because I'd written the same numbers on my own clipboard every single morning, the mile markers where I made each stop. Then at the very bottom of the paper, after the last child's name, there was one more line. It said, Dale Rucker, mile 31.4, mile 31.4 was the Hicks Creek Waste Treatment Facility. It wasn't a bus stop. It wasn't anything. It was a plant that sat off a gravel access road behind a chain-link fence, and I passed it every single morning without stopping. I had never stopped there in 11 years. Carol and I agreed it was probably some kind of system error, a test file that had gotten corrupted. We didn't call anyone. This was 94. You didn't escalate weird printer output to the sheriff. We folded the paper up, threw it in the trash, and that was that. Except the next morning there was more paper on the floor. This time the names were in a different order. Not my pickup order. Some other order I didn't recognize right away. I took it home that night and spread it across my kitchen table under the fluorescent light, and I worked it out. It was reverse alphabetical by last name, and the numbers after each name this time weren't mile markers. They were ages. Tommy Breeze was 7. Kayla Denton was 8. They were all correct. I hadn't written those ages down anywhere. I hadn't memorized them. I had to go check the enrollment sheet Carol kept in a manila folder in her filing cabinet to confirm, and every single age matched. At the bottom again, Dale Rucker, 38. I was 38 years old. I started making sure I was first into the office every morning. I wanted to see the paper before anyone else. 3 days it was blank. Then on the Friday before Halloween, I came in at 5:15, well before dawn, and the printer was running. I could hear it from the parking lot, that mechanical chatter, that rapid-fire needle-on-ribbon sound, and I stood at the door of the depot for probably 4 full minutes before I went in. The paper was still printing. I watched it feed out, letter by letter, in that slow dot matrix crawl, and what I was reading was a description of my bus route. But it was written in present tense, like someone was watching me drive it right now. Except it was 5:15 in the morning, and the bus was in the lot, and I was standing right there. It described the fog on the switchbacks, and there was fog that morning, a heavy ground fog that sat in the hollers like cold water. It described the color of the leaves on the ridgeline, burnt orange and black-edged, which was accurate. It described a figure standing at the gate of the Hicks Creek facility as the bus passed mile 31.4. I had passed that gate every single day for 11 years. I had never seen anyone standing at it. The printer stopped. I tore the paper off and read the last line 3 times because I thought I was misreading it. It said, "It will stop printing when you stop." I drove the route that morning because I had 18 kids depending on me, and I was not going to let a machine scare me into leaving them without a driver. I drove the whole route. I came around the long bend past the ridge, and mile 31.4 came up on my left. The gravel access road, the chain link fence, and I looked. There was a person standing at the gate, not a worker. Workers didn't come in until 6:30, and it was 6:10. This person was standing on the outside of the fence, facing the road, and they were wearing a yellow rain slicker the same color as my bus. They were the right height to be me, same build as me. I am not a small man, 6'2", heavy-set, and this person was 6'2", heavy-set, standing completely still in no wind. They had a clipboard. I kept driving. I did not stop. I kept my eyes on the road, and I told myself it was a utility worker, a contractor, somebody doing early inspection, and the clipboard was a coincidence, and the rain slicker was a coincidence, and the build was a coincidence, and by the time I had Tommy Breeze on the bus singing some cartoon song, I almost believed it. That afternoon I went to the public library in Harlan, and I asked the librarian if they kept old newspapers. She brought me 3 boxes of clippings, organized by the County Historical Society. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. I just started going through them. I found it in a clipping from the Harlan Daily Enterprise, October 1971. A bus driver named Curtis Pell had abandoned his route at mile 31.4, pulled off at the Hicks Creek facility access road, and walked into the treatment plant. They found him the next morning in one of the sedimentation pools. The coroner ruled it accidental. He was 38 years old. In the same box, I found a second clipping. October 1952, a driver named Howard Blaine. Route 9, mile 31.4. Also 38. The clippings were not together. They were in different folders, years apart, filed under different subject headings. Whoever organized that archive had no reason to connect them. I connected them, sitting on a hard library chair under a flickering fluorescent bulb, with my heart going so loud I could feel it in my back teeth. I quit the next day. I told dispatch I had a family situation. I drove to Lexington and stayed with my cousin for 3 weeks, and I did not tell him why. The printing stopped when I stopped. I know it stopped because Carol called me in November to say the computer had been acting normal, and did I know anything about a subscription service or software package that might have been running. I told her no. She told me the IT person from the county had looked at it and found nothing. No files, no saved documents, no print history. I've moved twice since then. I don't drive commercially anymore. I wrote this account out by hand first, then typed it up on a word processor at the public library. And I'm putting it out because I am 51 years old now, and I've been carrying this for 13 years. And I think the only way to put it down is to give it to someone else to hold. I need you to understand that I am not asking for your sympathy. I am asking for your attention, because I just heard my printer start up in the next room, and I live alone, and it has been unplugged since Tuesday. My name is Greg Hamill. I'm a pharmacist. Was a pharmacist, I guess, depending on how you look at it. I worked the closing shift at a Walgreens in Decatur, Illinois, the one on East Pershing Road, if you know the area. This was 2013, back when everyone was still getting used to carrying a little glass rectangle in their pocket that could do everything except make you feel less alone at 2 in the morning. The cop training field sat about a quarter mile behind our store. You could see the perimeter fence from the pharmacy drive-through window if you leaned at the right angle. Most nights it was just dark over there, a flat black rectangle against a slightly less black sky. Occasionally you'd see flashlight beams cutting around during night exercises. The officers in training called it the pit because it was lower than street level, an old quarry repurposed sometime in the 80s. We got used to seeing the patrol cars idling along the service road at odd hours. It was background noise, part of the job. I had a regular named Denny Cathcart. 60-something retired union guy, came in every other Wednesday for his metformin and a bag of Werther's Originals. We'd chat about the Cardinals, normal stuff. One Wednesday in October, he didn't come in. I didn't think much of it. The following Wednesday, his daughter called the pharmacy to update his pickup authorization. She said Denny had passed. "Heart," she said. "Quick." I told her I was sorry. I meant it. 2 days later, standing at the drive-through window at about 11:15 at night, I saw Denny in the parking lot. He was standing between a Dodge minivan and a Chevy Silverado, just past the glow of the nearest overhead light. He was wearing the same quilted flannel jacket he always wore, the green Carhartt one with the broken zipper pull. I remember the zipper pull because I'd teased him about it once, and he'd laughed and said his wife kept meaning to fix it. His wife had been gone for 6 years. I blinked. I looked away to hand a customer their prescription bag. When I looked back, the space between the minivan and the truck was empty. I told myself it was exhaustion. I was putting in 50-hour weeks that month because we were short-staffed. I went home, drank a glass of water, went to sleep. The second time was 11 days later. I was counting pills in the back, manual count on a tray, the kind of repetitive work that puts your eyes on autopilot. The store was technically closed. I was alone finishing inventory. The overhead fluorescents in the back room have a flicker cycle, a slow pulse you stop noticing after the first year. That night, I noticed it, because in one of those dim pulses, I saw a shape in the convex security mirror mounted above the stockroom door. A man, standing in the aisle just outside, between the greeting cards and the seasonal display, facing the mirror, facing me. I spun around. The aisle was empty. The seasonal display was Halloween stuff, orange and black streamers, bags of candy corn, a cardboard standee of a skeleton. Nothing else. But the shape in the mirror had been wearing a green quilted jacket. I called out. My voice sounded wrong in that empty store, too soft, eaten up by the shelving. Nothing answered. I walked every aisle. I checked the bathrooms. I checked the stockroom. I set the alarm and I left. And I sat in my car in the parking lot for a while before I drove home because my hands were shaking on the wheel. I want to be clear about what happened next because I know how it sounds. I started researching. I'm a pharmacist. I don't jump to conclusions. I looked into grief hallucinations, hypnagogia, stress-induced visual disturbances. I texted my friend Marcus, who's a nurse practitioner in Champaign, and described what I'd seen without context, and he sent me 4 links about bereavement-related perceptual anomalies. I filed it away. I was fine. Then the training field started. The 3rd week of November, the night exercises at the pit ramped up. Longer hours, more vehicles, floodlights they'd set up on temporary poles along the perimeter. The light washed over our back lot in a pale, jittery spill. It made the parking lot look underwater at 2 in the morning, which was when I was finishing up a major recount that our district manager had requested. I was at the drive-through window again. I had my personal phone out, an iPhone 5, the first one I'd owned. And I was using the flashlight app to read a label because one of our overhead bulbs had burned out. I looked up through the window toward the training field. Denny was at the fence, not near it, at it. Fingers laced through the chain link, face pressed against it. He was maybe 80 feet away, and the floodlight from the pit was hitting him dead on, and I could see him clearly. Green jacket, his posture, that forward lean he had, weight on his heels, the way he stood when he was waiting for a prescription and trying not to look impatient. I raised my phone and took a picture. He turned his head and looked directly at me. I can't fully explain what happened to my body in that moment. Every hair on my arms went rigid. The phone nearly left my hand. Because his face, I'd known Denny Cathcart for 3 years. I knew his face, and the face that turned toward me through 80 feet of flood-lit November air was not wrong in any way I could point to. It was just his face, except his eyes didn't catch the light the way eyes do. They were the same flat, lightless black as the sky behind the pit. He raised one hand off the fence, not a wave, slower than that. The way you gesture for someone to come closer. I did not go closer. I locked the drive-through window. I called 911 from the store landline and told them there was an intruder at the perimeter of the training field. I gave my name and my employee ID. I waited inside with the lights on until a patrol unit arrived, about 12 minutes. They walked the fence line with a K9. They found nothing. No footprints in the frost on the ground near the fence. No disturbance on the chain link. The officer I spoke to, a woman named Reyes, wrote up a report. She was professional and kind, and I could tell she thought I was having some kind of episode. I requested a copy of that report the following Monday. I have it. It exists. It is 17 lines of incident documentation in a Macon County file, and the last line reads, "Area clear. No subjects located. Complainant released on scene." I have read that line 100 times. Area clear. I called Denny's daughter the next day. I told her I worked at the Walgreens her father had used. I asked carefully if there was anything unusual about his passing, if it had happened near that area, if he'd spent time near East Pershing in his final days. She was quiet for a moment. She said Denny had actually died in the pit, not a heart attack. She'd told the pharmacy that to keep it simple. What actually happened was that Denny had been walking the perimeter of the old quarry. He walked there sometimes in the evenings, she said, old habit from when the area was less developed, and he had gone through a weak section of the temporary fencing the county had put up during a training field expansion. He fell. He was found the next morning. The county had been quiet about it because the fence had been their installation. I quit my job at the end of that week. I put in a transfer to a different Walgreens in Springfield, 30 miles north. I found a new apartment. I did not go back to East Pershing Road. For a while, nothing happened. For about 4 months, nothing happened. Then one evening, I was leaving my new store in Springfield, and in the parking lot, standing between a Ford Explorer and a shopping cart corral, was a woman I didn't recognize. She was wearing a winter coat, wool, charcoal gray. She was looking at me, and her eyes caught no light at all. She raised one hand. I understood then. It wasn't about Denny specifically. It wasn't about grief or guilt or unfinished business. The training field, the pit, whatever that place held, it had introduced me to something, and that something had introduced me to others. A network, a roster. I stopped being afraid. I'm telling you this now because I want you to understand. I'm not in danger anymore. I know that sounds like the worst possible thing I could say at the end of a story like this. It is.